Welcome to the online version of History of Art and Design 1133. This is the electronic section 01. My name is Leanne Schneider. The best way to get in contact with me is by email. I check my email at least once a day between the hours of 8 and 5. I have both my Master's of Art in Art History and my Master's in Library and Information Science with a concentration in Museum Studies. I did my master's thesis research in art history on the European representation of otherness throughout the 15th, 16th, and 17th centuries, specifically on how Europeans represented sub-Saharan Africans, Amerindians, and people of mixed race in the visual arts, and how that impacted our modern and contemporary notion of race. I love to travel, read, watch Netflix, visit art museums, breweries, and coffee shops. If you have any questions about graduate school or study abroad, I highly recommend studying abroad if it's something that you're able to do. I studied abroad in undergrad, so ask me if you need help finding scholarships or just you want any information on that. Most recently, I visited Hawaii. It's an amazing state if you ever have the chance to go. I love art, looking at it, making it, living with it, and I especially love how art is a reflection of time, place, and people. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. My personal philosophies about studying art: I believe that a knowledge of history is necessary, and without it, one runs the risk of becoming arrogant and misguided. Euro-American history is written predominantly by white Christian men, and therefore an effort must be made to look beyond and outside this one single perspective. That being said, art history in Europe and America usually implies art of the West. Our textbook reaches beyond that, but the only continent it really leaves out, I think, is South America, and I tried to include a fair amount of non-Western material on our schedule. However, it will be predominantly European art. I believe art history is more fun than regular history because there are much more images, fewer battles, and a lot of naked people running around. So studying art in the context of history allows us a unique glimpse at the soul of a people and their culture at any point in history. While an artist might not consciously use their art as a means to express their moment in history, all artists are a product of that environment, and their art will reflect this. Art itself is hard to define because art is everything. Art is life, and life is art, and art is all around us. So why do we study art history? History is fascinating. You can disagree, but honestly, anything happening in the Game of Thrones already happened in like 12 different cultures at 50 different times across the globe. And understanding history can contextualize our contemporary experience. For instance, why are we always at war with the Middle East? Or why do Israel and Palestine not get along? These things, we can understand that from looking at history. All artists build on the artists who came before them. Andy Warhol could not have existed without Michelangelo. Some artists purposefully look back at their past and use that to grow their art. However, some, and probably most, do this unconsciously. But again, we have to have some sort of artistic norm to deconstruct to get to the contemporary art that we have today. Make sure you read your syllabus, read it thoroughly. Explanations of the exams, your weekly quizzes, and your period proposal project, which is your only other assignment, are all in the syllabus. I just want to note that readings listed under the readings column are from the required text Stokested-Cawthron, edition 5 of their huge book, Art History, unless otherwise noted. And then the numbers, I have chosen specifically the pages that I want you to read. So if you turn to a page and the page starts in the middle of a paragraph, go to the next heading. So for instance, if I want you to read all about Caravaggio, but not the artists who come before and after him in the book, just make sure you're reading everything in those major headings when you get to those page numbers. That's why there are so many page numbers, so you don't have to read every single page in most of the chapters. Again, at the end of every week, you will have a weekly quiz. Those are all open on the first day of class. So if you want, you can go ahead and do as many as you want, but they are all due on those due dates listed in the syllabus. The required text for this course is Art History Combined 5th edition by Marilyn Stockstad and Michael Cothran. The book or ebook is acceptable. It's published by Pearson Publishing. Recommended text, the most highly recommended is the Sylvan Barnett's Short Guide to Writing About Art. This will be helpful for you throughout your entire college career, whenever you go to write about art, and then also for your exams where we will do comparison essays. FYI, not all of the slides will have audio, so don't freak out if there's no audio to go along with a slide. So what is art? This is a difficult question and deals with issues of beauty, technical skill, ordered design, imagination, and conceptual meaning. Some works are incomprehensible and barely artistic to some viewers, like a Rothko, while others find it incredibly sophisticated and groundbreaking. Some art is also craft, like the quilt pictured here. Some was made for specific purposes, like architecture or religious paintings. So keep this in mind as we go through. This early medieval pen and ink manuscript is a good example of line. Lines are clearly outlined in black and there are no gradual shadings or transitions. Yet the artists use overlapping to create a sense of three-dimensionality. This French Baroque painting is a good example of how an artist uses light. The light source in the painting is a partially concealed candle, which provides dramatic highlights and shadows in the work. This circular Italian Renaissance painting provides a good discussion of form. Within the work, there is a complex overlapping of highly three-dimensional forms. Michelangelo uses a high degree of modeling or shading on the figures to heighten their solid forms. Michelangelo also uses foreshortening to make it appear that the Virgin Mary's elbow is projecting into the viewer's space. This manuscript is a good example of an artist using color. Instead of a light source from one particular angle, this scene is illuminated all over, which therefore emphasizes the many jewel-like colors he uses. Raphael, an Italian Renaissance artist, uses clear lines and careful modeling in his work. Raphael is also known for his primary color palette with highly saturated hues of red and blue. In terms of composition, you see a triangular or pyramidal shape to the group of figures, and they're centrally located in the painting, giving the composition a symmetrical look. There is a strong horizontal axis as well. Raphael uses atmospheric perspective to give a sense of recession into the background. This French Impressionist work emphasizes flickering light and color instead of line. The composition has a diagonal axis and is asymmetrical. The overall look is much more flat than in Raphael's work. Analyze the subject matter here in this Roger van der Weyden. Analyze the subject matter, composition, and style of this Flemish Renaissance painting. How would you describe the compositional axis? Do the figures look stylized or naturalistic? What is the emotional tone that the artist is trying to achieve? What do you see in terms of color, line, light, and form? What is different about this scene from the previous painting? How are they similar? Analyze the composition, number of figures, color, form, line, and perspective. Do this often throughout the class, as on all three of your exams, you will be asked to write a compare and contrast essay. and this is exactly the type of stuff I'll be asking for. Art historians have investigated a link between Roger van der Weyden, who took a trip to Italy in 1450, and the works of this early Renaissance artist, Fra Angelico. Specifically, what do you notice about the settings the figures occupy? The color palette, the poses, the emotional tone. Do you think that van der Weyden was inspired or influenced by this fresco? Alright, now to get into the bulk of the class. Art, and other aspects of culture, is one of the main characteristics of humanity that set Homo sapiens apart from the rest of animals. Most prehistoric art, or intentional mark making that isn't a tool, is in the form of cave paintings, figurines, and large monolith structures, such as Stonehenge. We're actually going to skip the Stone Age and move right into the Paleolithic period. Art as image making starts in 38,000 BCE, before the Common Era, in Africa, Europe, and Australia. The world's oldest examples of art come from South Africa in decorated ochre blocks. Because the patterns are the same from piece to piece, archaeologists believe that they were purposeful for decoration. What's frustrating about a lot of these images and artifacts from prehistoric time is that we know basically nothing about how they were used or why they were made. One of the most fascinating images is this piece, the lion human from Germany. This piece demonstrates the purely human capacity for imagination. It's so fascinating because it demonstrates that one human had to sit down and kind of create this idea of a composite human and lion creature, which obviously never existed in real life. This cave painting is very carefully rendered. What we think we see, however, might not be what was intended by the maker. Are the animals running in a pack together? Imagine the cave wall, which is very large, lit by only torchlight. Then perhaps it is a time-lapse image of a few animals at different stages in a run? Why are there so many types of animals? We can speculate that perhaps prehistoric humans saw animals differently than we do. But why go to the dangerous depths of a cave to record them? What was the purpose of this drawing, if any? This small limestone sculpture seems to represent a female figure. How would you describe this work? What features are exaggerated or left out completely? Why do you think prehistoric people would take the time to carve a work like this? What could it have meant? Because figurines similar to this one have appeared over a large geographical area, some scholars believe that perhaps they were used as a way to communicate similar beliefs between hunter-gatherer groups, especially during times when the climate was harsh, to show that another group was acceptable for interaction and especially for mating.